The Galactic Coalition Command Center hummed with tense energy as holographic displays showed the advancing Vrex swarm consuming another star system in the Outer Rim. Commander Zelthax of the Korthan Empire slammed his massive fist against the tactical table, causing several smaller species representatives to flinch at the sound. "Another colony lost," Zelthax growled, his 4 eyes blazing with frustration. "The Vrex bioships multiply faster than we can destroy them. Our finest warriors fall before their endless numbers." High Tactician Serena of the Selenium Collective adjusted her crystalline form, light refracting through her translucent body as she analyzed the data streams. The mathematical probability of stopping their advance toward the Talon Nebula colonies stands at 17% and falling. We have lost 6 major engagements in the past lunar cycle. Every conventional strategy has failed. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of species murmured in worry and fear. The Vrex swarm had appeared from unknown space 3 years ago, and their hive-mind coordination made them nearly unstoppable. They consumed resources, technology, and entire populations, growing stronger with each victory. Tech Master Vorn of the Draxi Confederacy extended his metallic appendages over the display, pulling up combat footage from the latest battle. Our most advanced weapons barely slow them down. They adapt to energy signatures within minutes. Our shielding technology becomes useless after the first engagement. It is as if they learn faster than we can innovate. "Then we must consider the unthinkable," Serena said quietly. Every head in the chamber turned toward her. "We must request assistance from the newest coalition members." A wave of protests erupted immediately. Zelthax roared above the noise. "The humans? Those soft-skinned primitives who only joined the coalition 8 months ago? They still use kinetic projectile weapons. They have no natural armor, no telepathic communication, no energy manipulation abilities. What could they possibly offer against the swarm?" "Desperation," Serena replied simply. "We are out of options, Commander. The Talon Nebula contains 47 billion civilians across 12 colony worlds. If it falls, the Vrex will have access to the inner systems. Earth has offered military support 3 times. We have refused each time. Perhaps that was arrogant." Vorn's optical sensors dimmed in what his species expressed as reluctance. "The human ships are sluggish compared to our vessels. Their weapons are crude. Their soldiers lack any enhanced abilities. I have reviewed their military specifications. They are centuries behind our technology." And yet, a new voice spoke from the chamber entrance. "Here we stand, having lost 6 consecutive battles with all our advanced technology." Ambassador Chen Wei of Earth walked into the chamber with calm confidence, her simple uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate armor and biological enhancements of the other species. She moved to the central display and studied the Vrex advancement patterns with analytical eyes. "We received your emergency distress signal 2 hours ago," Chen said. "Earth Command anticipated you might eventually need what we offer." "And what exactly do humans offer?" Zelthax challenged. "Your species has no experience with space warfare on this scale. You have fought among yourselves on a single planet. The Vrex swarm would consume your entire fleet in minutes." Chen smiled slightly. "We offer something none of you possess, Commander. We offer experience in fighting enemies we should have no chance against. Human history is filled with victories that mathematics said were impossible. We offer adaptability, creativity, and the refusal to accept defeat, even when logic demands it." Serena's form brightened with interest. "Explain." "Every species in this coalition evolved as apex predators or highly specialized survivors," Chen began. "You developed superior technology, enhanced biology, or collective consciousness. Humans evolved as persistence hunters and social learners. We are not the strongest, fastest, or smartest. We survive by adapting, by learning from failure, and by working together in ways that seem chaotic to more ordered minds." Chaos will not defeat the swarm, Vorn stated flatly. Perhaps not, Chen agreed, but conventional order has failed 6 times. Earth offers you 12 carrier groups, 300 combat vessels, and 40,000 marines. We ask only that you allow us to fight in our own way, using our own tactics. The chamber fell silent as the coalition leaders considered this. Finally, Zelthax spoke, his voice heavy with doubt. Very well, human. We accept your assistance. But know this, the defense of the Talon Nebula is a suicide mission. The Vreks outnumber us 20-1. Even with your forces, we face almost certain destruction. Then it's a good thing humans are terrible at accepting certainty, Chen replied. 3 days later, the human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the Talon Nebula staging area. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UESS Indomitable, watching as coalition forces arranged themselves in traditional battle formations. The Corthan dreadnoughts formed an imposing wall of firepower. The Selenium fleet created an intricate web of support vessels. The Draxi tech ships positioned themselves for maximum field coverage. And then there were the humans, arranging their fleet in what appeared to be complete disorder. Coalition Command is hailing us, Lieutenant Park reported. They want to know why we're not taking formation. Elena smiled. Tell them we are in formation. It just doesn't look like what they're used to. Her executive officer, Commander Okonkwo, pulled up the tactical display. The Corthan commander is already calling us undisciplined. The Selenium tacticians calculate our positioning as a 32% defensive efficiency compared to standard doctrine. Good, Elena said. Let them think we're incompetent. First rule of human warfare. If your enemy expects you to do the logical thing, do something else entirely. The bridge crew worked quietly, each member focused on their assigned tasks. Elena had handpicked this crew from volunteers who understood what they were facing. Every person here knew the odds. Every person here had chosen to come anyway. Captain, the sensor officer called out, I'm detecting massive spatial distortions at the nebula's edge. The Vrek swarm is arriving. Estimated numbers. She paused, checking her readings twice. Over 4,000 bioships. Elena felt her heart rate increase, but kept her voice steady. Alert all human vessels. Condition 1. Broadcast to coalition forces. The swarm has arrived. Time to show them what humans do best. What's that, Captain? A young ensign asked nervously. Elena looked at the approaching wave of enemy vessels on the display. Each one, a living ship, grown by the hive mind specifically for war. She thought of the billions of civilians depending on this desperate defense. She thought of her crew, brave despite their fear. She thought of every impossible victory in human history. We adapt, and we never stop fighting for those who need us. The Vrek swarms swept toward them like a living tide of destruction, and the battle for the Talon Nebula began. The Vrek swarm moved through space like a plague of locusts, their bioships pulsing with organic energy that made sensor readings fluctuate wildly. Each vessel ranged from small fighter-sized organisms to massive capital ships the size of mountains, all connected through the hive mind that made them fight with perfect coordination. Commander Zelthax watched from his flagship as the swarm approached the coalition defensive line. All Corthan vessels, prepare primary weapons. Today we show these parasites the strength of true warriors. Forward batteries full power. We meet them head-on as our ancestors taught us. The massive Corthan dreadnoughts surged forward, their heavy armor gleaming as energy weapons charged with brilliant light. Behind them, the Selenium support fleet wove patterns of protective shields and tactical support. The Draxi tech ships hung back, their advanced sensors analyzing every movement of the approaching enemy. And scattered seemingly at random across the battlefield, human ships darted and repositioned in ways that made no tactical sense to the other coalition forces. The humans are breaking formation, Serena observed from her command ship. No, correction. They never had a formation to begin with. Their vessels are positioned according to no recognizable military doctrine. Vorn's sensors tracked the human fleet movements with growing confusion. Agreed, their placement appears random. Several vessels have positioned themselves near the civilian evacuation corridors, rather than the combat zone. Their largest carriers are hanging back, when standard doctrine would place them midfield for fighter deployment. Cowards, Zelthax snarled. They position themselves to flee when the battle turns against us. The Vrek swarm crashed into the Korthan line, like a tidal wave hitting a cliff. The sounds of weapons fire filled the communication channels, as energy beams lanced through space, destroying dozens of bioships in the opening moments. The Korthan warriors roared their battle cries as they poured devastating firepower into the enemy mass. But for every Vrek ship destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. The bioships swarmed around the Korthan dreadnoughts, sacrificing themselves to bring down shields through sheer attrition. Within minutes, 3 Korthan vessels reported critical damage. Selenium Fleet, deploy support matrix, Serena commanded. Her ships moved with mathematical precision, creating overlapping shield bubbles and repair fields. The Korthan line stabilized, but barely. Meanwhile, Captain Elena Vasquez studied the battle from a position that other commanders considered far too distant from the main engagement. Her tactical officer continuously updated the holographic display with Vrek's movement patterns, attack vectors, and response times. They're adapting already, Lieutenant Park noted. The Vreks just shifted their assault pattern to counter the selenium shield frequency. Took them less than 4 minutes. Predictable, Elena said. They're a hive mind. They learn fast, but they learn uniformly. Everyone see how they all adjusted at exactly the same moment? Commander Okonkwo nodded. Perfect coordination. No independent thought. Each ship is just an extension of the collective consciousness. Which means, Elena continued, they expect their enemies to also fight with unified doctrine and predictable patterns. All human vessels, execute your individual mission parameters. No 2 ships follow the same attack pattern. I want complete tactical disorder. Across the human fleet, captains received their orders and grinned. This was what they had trained for. The UESS Thunderchild suddenly accelerated directly toward a cluster of Vrex bioships, then executed a seemingly panicked retreat at the last second, broadcasting distress signals that made it appear damaged. Dozens of Vrex ships pursued, only to fly directly into a minefield the Thunderchild had deployed during its retreat. The UESS Pathfinder broadcast strange signals into space. Human music, specifically an old jazz composition with erratic rhythms and unpredictable tempo changes. The Vrex ships in range began moving sluggishly, their hive mind coordination disrupted by the chaotic auditory input they couldn't categorize. The UESS Guardian positioned itself directly in the path of a Vrex assault wave that was heading toward an evacuation ship full of civilian refugees. Instead of fleeing, the Guardian opened fire while broadcasting a simple message. You want them? You go through us first. The human ship took heavy damage, but held position until the evacuation vessel escaped to hyperspace. Madness, Zelthax muttered as he watched the human tactics on his display. They have no unified strategy. Each ship acts independently. This is not warfare. This is chaos. But Serena was analyzing the results with her mathematical mind, and she was seeing something the warrior commander missed. Observe the outcome, not the method. The humans have destroyed 147 Vrex ships, while losing only 3 of their own. Their unpredictability is preventing the swarm from adapting. Vorn's sensors confirmed this. Fascinating. The Vrex hive mind is attempting to form counter patterns, but by the time they adapt to one human ship's tactics, that ship has changed its approach entirely. The humans are generating more tactical variables than the swarm can process. Another element of human strategy became apparent when a Korthan cruiser took critical damage and began venting atmosphere. The crew prepared to evacuate, accepting their fate according to warrior tradition. But 3 human ships broke from their combat positions and surrounded the damaged vessel, extending docking tubes and emergency shields. "What are they doing?" Zelfax demanded. "Those ships should be fighting, not wasting resources on a lost vessel." "They are performing rescue operations," Serena said quietly. "They are saving your warriors, Commander." Human Marines in combat suits crossed into the dying Corthan ship, pulling wounded warriors to safety, even as explosions rocked the vessel around them. They worked with desperate speed, refusing to leave anyone behind. When the Corthan ship finally broke apart, every surviving crew member was safe aboard human vessels. "Why?" Zelthax asked, genuinely confused. "Those warriors were already lost. The humans risked 3 ships and dozens of their own people for soldiers who are not even their own species." "Because that's what humans do." Ambassador Chen's voice came over the command channel. "We don't abandon people. Any people. That's not weakness, Commander. That's what makes us strong." The battle raged for hours. The Corthan line began to buckle under the relentless Vrex assault. The Selenium shields started to fail from sustained bombardment. The Draxi tech ships struggled to keep systems online, as the bioships adapted to their electronic warfare. But scattered across the battlefield, human ships continued their chaotic dance. They fought with no pattern, no predictable doctrine, no unified strategy. They rescued the wounded of every species. They shared their tactical observations with all coalition forces in real time, hiding nothing. They turned retreat into ambush, used deception as a weapon, and treated every life as worth saving. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Elena watched as the coalition center began to collapse. "They're breaking. The Corthan line can't hold much longer." "Should we move to reinforce?" Okonkwo asked. Elena shook her head. "Not yet. We've been gathering data on every Vrex attack pattern, every adaptation, every response. It's time to show the coalition what human analysis can do when we share it freely." She opened a channel to all coalition vessels. "This is Captain Vasquez to all forces. We're transmitting complete tactical data on Vrex behavior patterns, weakness points, and predictive models. We've identified how to disrupt their hive-mind coordination. Use this information however you see fit." Across the coalition fleet, commanders received the human data and stared in shock at the depth of analysis. In just hours of combat, the humans had mapped nearly every Vrex tactical response and found exploitable patterns. "They're giving this to everyone?" Vorn said in disbelief. "This information is worth more than entire fleet groups. They hoard nothing?" "Humans believe knowledge is more valuable when shared," Serena said, studying the data. "And they may have just given us the key to survival." The Vrex swarm pressed forward, but for the first time, doubt flickered in the hive mind's collective consciousness. These new enemies fought like nothing they had encountered before, and the confusion was growing. The tactical data from the human fleet spread through coalition command systems like wildfire. Officers and commanders who moments before had dismissed human capabilities now stared at analysis that revealed patterns they had missed in years of fighting the Vrex swarm. High Tactician Serena processed the information through her crystalline neural network, her form glowing brighter with each revelation. Remarkable. The humans identified a 0.7-second delay in Vrex coordination when their formation density exceeds certain thresholds. They found micro-variations in bioship hull strength based on recent replication speed. They even predicted likely attack vectors based on resource consumption patterns. "How did they gather this much data so quickly?" Vorn asked, his mechanical mind struggling to understand. "We have been fighting the Vrex for 3 years and never noticed these details. Because you were too busy fighting to watch." Captain Elena Vasquez's voice came through the command channel. Humans learned long ago that sometimes the best way to win is to lose slowly while learning everything about your enemy. We call it tactical patience. Commander Zelthax studied the data, his warrior pride warring with the evidence before him. The humans had not only survived their chaotic engagement with minimal losses, they had turned observation into actionable intelligence. These patterns you identified, can they be exploited? Absolutely, Elena confirmed, but not with traditional tactics. The Vrex adapts too quickly to standard military doctrine. You need to embrace what your training probably tells you is wrong: unpredictability, improvisation, and creative chaos. Chaos is not strategy, Zelthax growled, but his tone held less certainty than before. Organized chaos is exactly strategy, Elena countered. Watch and learn, Commander. She switched channels to address her fleet. All human vessels, Operation Cascade, show our coalition friends what controlled disorder looks like. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. The human fleet executed what appeared to be dozens of unrelated maneuvers simultaneously. Ships broke formation, regrouped, scattered, and converged with no apparent coordination. But each movement served multiple purposes. The UESS Thunderchild broadcasted false engine signatures suggesting critical damage while actually laying a trap. When Vrex ships swarmed to finish the crippled vessel, human fighters that had been hiding in the ship's sensor shadow emerged and struck at the bioship's identified weak points. The UESS Pathfinder continued its audio disruption campaign, but now other human ships joined in, creating a symphony of chaos that confused the hive mind's coordination across an expanding area of the battlefield. Jazz gave way to rock music, then classical, then recordings of Earth's natural sounds, thunderstorms, ocean waves, animal calls. The Vrex had no framework to process such random sensory input. Meanwhile, human Marines executed a daring boarding action on a damaged Vrex bioship. But they weren't there to destroy it. They were there to rescue alien civilians the swarm had captured from a previous battle. The Marines fought through organic corridors, their simple kinetic weapons proving more reliable than energy weapons in the bioship's strange interior environment. "Why are humans boarding enemy vessels to save prisoners?" Vorn asked, tracking the operation with his sensors. "The tactical risk far outweighs the strategic value." "Because those are people in there," Ambassador Chen responded from her observation post. "And humans don't calculate the value of lives in strategic terms. We save who we can, whenever we can." The boarding team successfully extracted 47 Draxi civilians who had been trapped in the bioship's holding chambers for weeks. As the Marines evacuated with the rescued prisoners, they transmitted detailed scans of the bioship's internal structure to all coalition forces. "They're sharing internal specifications," Serena observed. "Even knowledge gained at great personal risk, they offer freely." But the most significant moment came when the human fleet began sharing their tactical approach in real time with coalition forces. Elena opened a direct channel to Zelthax. "Commander, your dreadnoughts are powerful but predictable. What if you combined Corthan's strength with human misdirection?" "Explain," Zelthax commanded. "Your ships always advance in formation, shields forward, weapons blazing. The Vrex know exactly what to expect. What if you feinted left, made them commit forces to counter you, then struck right, while broadcasting false engine readings to mask your true heading?" Zelthax considered this. Everything in his warrior culture told him that deception was dishonorable, that true strength needed no tricks. But his culture's traditional tactics had lost 6 battles. "Very well, human. We will attempt your strategy." The massive Corthan dreadnoughts began to move in ways that shocked the Selenium observers. They executed false retreats, used sensor spoofing, and coordinated attacks from unexpected angles. The first time a Korthan ship pretended to be crippled, and then ambushed pursuing Vrex vessels, Zelthax felt a savage satisfaction that surprised him. "This," he rumbled with approval, "is actually quite effective." Serena's fleet also adapted. Her Selenium ships had always relied on mathematical precision and coordinated shield matrices. Now, influenced by human creativity, they began introducing random variables into their movements. Shield frequencies shifted unpredictably. Support patterns changed mid-execution. The calculated randomness made Selenium vessels far harder targets. "Fascinating," Serena said, as her tactical efficiency ratings actually improved. "By introducing controlled chaos into our precision, we become less predictable without sacrificing effectiveness. The humans understand something we missed. Perfect order can be perfectly countered." The Draxia tech ships discovered that human-style improvisation worked well with their advanced systems. Vorn's vessels began deploying technology in unconventional ways, using mining equipment as weapons, converting sensor arrays into jamming devices, and generally treating their sophisticated systems as tools for creative problem-solving, rather than following strict technical protocols. "Our equipment manual specifically warned against such modifications," Vorn noted as his ship used a terraforming laser to slice through 3 Vrex bioships. However, the manuals did not anticipate combat scenarios requiring immediate adaptation. Across the battlefield, something unprecedented was happening. The Coalition forces were learning to fight like humans, creatively, adaptably, and with genuine concern for each other's survival. When a Selenium vessel took critical damage, Korthan ships that hours before would have ignored a weak support craft now moved to protect it. When Draxi tech ships needed cover to execute complex electronic warfare, human fighters provided escort without being asked. When human marines needed heavy fire support during rescue operations, Korthan warriors delivered it with enthusiasm. The Vrex swarm began to show signs of something its hive mind had never experienced before: confusion. The bioships hesitated, attack patterns became less coordinated. The mathematical certainty that had made the swarm unstoppable started to break down when faced with enemies who refused to follow predictable military doctrine. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Elena watched the tide of battle shift. "They're adapting to adaptation," she noted. "The hive mind is trying to learn unpredictability. But that's a logical impossibility for a collective consciousness. You can't calculate randomness." Lieutenant Park highlighted a section of the battlefield. "Captain, we have a problem. A massive Vrex formation is breaking away from the main battle. They're heading for the civilian evacuation routes." Elena felt her stomach tighten. 40,000 civilians were still being evacuated from the innermost colony worlds. If the Vrex reached them, it would be a massacre. How many bioships in that formation? Over 800. They're abandoning the battle with us to target defenseless transports. Every instinct told Elena to pursue, to protect those civilians. But that would mean pulling forces away from the main battle, potentially collapsing the Coalition defense. It was exactly the kind of tactical dilemma the Vrex hive mind would exploit. "Send word to Coalition Command," Elena said quietly. "Ask them what we should do." Commander Okonkwo looked surprised. "Captain, with respect, we don't need permission to defend civilians." "I know," Elena replied, "but our allies need to choose. They need to decide if protecting innocent lives is worth the tactical cost. This isn't our decision alone anymore." The response came immediately from Commander Zelthax, and it surprised everyone. "Human vessels, the Korthan Second Fleet will accompany you to defend the civilians. Warriors do not allow the helpless to be slaughtered while we stand capable of preventing it." Serena's voice followed. "Selenium Support Group 3 is rerouting to evacuation corridors. We will provide shield coverage for all transport vessels." Vorn added his commitment. "Draxii tech ships will deploy long-range disruption fields to slow the Vrex advance. Protecting civilians is logical. Dead populations cannot rebuild or contribute to future defense. Elena felt something warm spread through her chest. Thank you, all of you. Let's show the swarm that when you threaten any of us, you face all of us. The coalition forces moved as one to defend the evacuation, and in that moment, the battle for the Talon Nebula became something more than a military engagement. It became a statement about who they were and what they stood for together. The race to protect the civilian evacuation became a testament to how much the coalition forces had changed in just hours of fighting alongside humans. What started as a desperate rescue mission transformed into a coordinated display of multi-species cooperation that would have seemed impossible when the battle began. The Corthan's Second Fleet charged ahead with their massive dreadnoughts, but instead of the traditional wall formation they had used for centuries, they spread out in a protective screen pattern that Captain Vasquez had suggested. The mighty warships positioned themselves between the approaching Vrex swarm and the fleeing civilian transports, creating a mobile barrier of armored defiance. "Weapons ready," Commander Zelthax ordered, his voice carrying a new quality that his crew noticed immediately. It wasn't just warrior fury anymore, it was protective determination. These civilians are under coalition protection. The swarm will learn what happens when they threaten those we shield. Behind the Corthan line, Selenium ships wove intricate patterns of overlapping energy shields. But Serena had learned from human tactics, and now her mathematically precise formations included deliberate variations and unpredictable shifts that made them harder targets. The shield bubbles flickered and moved in ways that confused Vrex targeting systems. "Maintain fluid defensive matrix," Serena commanded. "Remember, perfect patterns can be perfectly countered. Controlled variation is our advantage." The Draxi tech ships deployed experimental jamming fields based on human creative thinking. Vorn's vessels broadcast contradictory sensor readings, created false fleet signatures, and generally filled space with so much electronic noise that the Vrex hive mind struggled to identify real targets from decoys. "Deploying auditory disruption as humans suggested," Vorn reported, "broadcasting Earth jazz music through subspace channels. The Vrex coordination in Sector 7 has decreased by 43%. Fascinating." And threading through it all, human vessels darted and weaved, providing the unpredictable element that kept the entire defense from becoming routine. They rescued damaged ships regardless of species, shared real-time tactical data, and demonstrated that protecting others was not a weakness, but a strength multiplier. The Vrex formation crashed into the coalition defense like a hammer striking an anvil, expecting the anvil to shatter. Instead, they found an enemy that bent, adapted, and struck back from unexpected directions. A cluster of Vrex bioships attempted to flank around the Corthan line, only to run directly into human mines that the USS Thunderchild had deployed during what appeared to be a chaotic retreat. The mines weren't particularly advanced compared to coalition technology, but their placement showed tactical genius born from creative thinking. "The humans led the Vrex right into that trap," one of Zelthax's tactical officers observed with open admiration. "They made their ship appear vulnerable, predicted the enemy's response, and prepared the battlefield accordingly." "That is called strategy," Zelthax rumbled. "I am beginning to understand why these soft-skinned creatures survived long enough to reach the stars." Meanwhile, human Marines were conducting operations that made tactical computers classify their actions as inefficient, but made flesh-and-blood beings call them heroes. A civilian transport carrying mostly Draxii families had suffered engine damage and couldn't keep pace with the evacuation. 3 Vrex bioships moved to intercept. The USS Guardian positioned itself directly in their path. The human ship was outgunned, outmassed, and facing odds that military doctrine said were unsurvivable. Captain Rodriguez of the Guardian opened a channel to the civilian transport. This is Guardian to civilian vessel Bright Hope. Get your engines running. We'll buy you the time you need. Human vessel, you cannot stand against 3 Vrex ships alone, the Draxi captain protested. Your sacrifice would be meaningless. With respect, Rodriguez replied calmly, protecting 6,000 civilians is never meaningless. Now get moving. That's an order. The Guardian opened fire with everything it had. Kinetic rounds tore through space, missiles streaked toward enemy vessels, and the ship's modest energy weapons added to the barrage. The Vrex ships returned fire with overwhelming force, and the Guardian's shields began to fail almost immediately. But help came from an unexpected source. 2 Korthan fighters broke formation and screamed toward the engagement at full speed. Human ship, this is Korthan Strike Team Valor. We saw what you're doing. Warriors stand together. Then a Selenium support vessel arrived, extending emergency shields over the battered Guardian. And the wise protect the brave, Serena's voice added. Continue your defense, Guardian. You are not alone. The Draxi tech ship Infinite Calculation joined next, deploying electronic warfare that disrupted Vrex targeting systems. And the logical support the compassionate, Vorn stated. This is what coalition means. Together the mixed group of vessels held the line while the civilian transport limped to safety. The Guardian took horrific damage, but when the rescue was complete, the ship and its crew had survived, protected by allies who hours before had doubted human value. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. A Korthan cruiser that would have abandoned a damaged Selenium vessel now defended it fiercely. Draxi ships that previously calculated strategic withdrawal now chose to stay and fight alongside human squadrons. Selenium tacticians who relied solely on mathematics now trusted their instincts and improvised when situations demanded it. The Vrex swarm was learning a terrible lesson. These enemies were not fighting as separate species anymore. They were fighting as a unified force that protected each other, learned from each other, and refused to abandon anyone. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Elena coordinated the defense with a communications board that showed constant chatter between species. Korthan warriors asked humans for tactical suggestions. Selenium ships requested human jazz recordings for their disruption broadcasts. Draxi vessels compared notes with human engineers on creative equipment modifications. This is what we needed to show them, Elena said to Commander Okonkwo. Not that humans are strong, but that cooperation makes everyone stronger. Lieutenant Park highlighted a new development on the tactical display. Captain, the main Vrex formation is changing behavior. They're pulling back from several fronts. It's like they're confused. Elena studied the patterns and nodded slowly. They're a hive mind designed to fight predictable enemies with unified doctrines. We've thrown so many variables at them that their adaptation protocols can't keep up. Every time they start to counter our tactics, someone tries something new. A transmission came from High Tactician Serena. Captain Vasquez, my analysis suggests the Vrex hive mind is experiencing decision paralysis. They cannot predict our next actions, because we ourselves do not fully know what we will do until circumstances demand it. Your human concept of thinking on your feet has become our collective advantage. The question is, can we push that advantage before they adapt to adaptation itself? Then we must strike now, Commander Zelfax interjected. All coalition forces, this is Korthon Command. The humans have shown us that strength without wisdom is wasted, and protection of others is the highest form of power. Today we fight not as separate species, but as one coalition. Prepare for coordinated assault. What followed was unprecedented in galactic military history. The coalition forces launched an attack that combined Korthan power, Selenium precision, Draxi technology, and human creativity into a unified offensive that the Vrex swarm had no framework to counter. Korthan dreadnoughts charged forward with human-style feints and deception, making the swarm commit forces to counter phantom threats. selenium ships created shield corridors that human fighters used for high-speed attack runs. Draxi vessels hacked Vrex bioships with techniques inspired by human improvisation, turning enemy vessels against each other. And human ships darted through it all, rescuing the wounded, sharing intelligence, and demonstrating that sometimes the greatest weapon is the refusal to let anyone fight alone. The Vrex formation that had threatened the civilian evacuation began to fragment. Bioships collided as their coordination failed. The hive mind's signals became chaotic. As it struggled to process tactical variables it was never designed to handle. For the first time since the swarm had appeared 3 years ago, they were retreating not from superior firepower, but from superior cooperation. "They're falling back," Vorn reported, with what sounded like amazement in his synthesized voice. Probability calculations showed this was impossible. "Humans taught us something important," Serena said quietly. "Some things are too important to let probability decide." Elena allowed herself a small smile. "The battle isn't over yet, but I think we just showed them something they've never faced before. An enemy that gets stronger by protecting each other instead of sacrificing each other." The coalition forces pressed their advantage, and across the stars, doubt that had plagued the galaxy for 3 years finally began to crack. The final phase of the battle for the Talon Nebula would be remembered not for the destruction it caused, but for what it revealed about unity, sacrifice, and the true meaning of strength. The Vrex swarm's retreat was not a panicked flight, but a strategic withdrawal as the hive mind attempted to regroup and process what had gone wrong. For 3 years, they had conquered system after system through numerical superiority and perfect coordination. Now they faced an enemy that turned their own advantages against them. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, exhausted but focused. Her uniform was stained with sweat, her voice hoarse from hours of continuous command, but her eyes remained sharp as she studied the battlefield. "They're regrouping at the nebula's outer edge. They'll try one more massive push." "Our forces are depleted," Commander Okonkwo reported. "We've taken significant casualties. Ammunition and energy reserves are running low across the fleet." Elena nodded. "Send the casualty reports to Coalition Command. They need to know the cost." The numbers were sobering. 47 human ships destroyed or critically damaged. Over 3,000 human personnel killed in action. The other coalition species had suffered similarly, with Korthon warriors, Selenium crews, and Draxi technicians all paying the price for defending the Nebula colonies. But those colonies still stood. 47 billion civilians had been evacuated or protected. Not a single transport ship had been lost. Every species had fought to protect beings they had never met, many of whom were not even their own kind. A priority transmission came through from Commander Zelthax. The mighty Korthon warrior appeared on the view screen, and Elena was struck by how different he looked from the beginning of the battle. His armor was scorched and damaged, but his eyes held something new: respect. "Captain Vasquez," Zelthax began, his voice formal, "I owe you an apology. When humans arrived, I called you weak. I dismissed your capabilities. I doubted your value to this coalition. I was wrong." Elena inclined her head. "Commander, you were protecting your people with the knowledge you had. There's no shame in that." "Perhaps," Zelthax continued, "but there is shame in refusing to see truth when it stands before you. Humans are not weak. You are not primitive. You possess strength of a kind my people forgot we needed. The strength to protect others even at great cost to yourselves. The strength to share knowledge freely. The strength to adapt rather than simply endure." Similar messages came from the other coalition commanders. Serena transmitted mathematical models showing how human tactical principles had increased coalition effectiveness by over 300%. Vorn sent detailed analysis of how human creative thinking had revolutionized Draxi combat applications of technology. But the battle was not finished. The wreck swarm was gathering for what sensors indicated would be their final assault. A massive formation of over 2,000 bioships. Every remaining vessel the hive mind could commit to the engagement. "They're going all in," Lieutenant Park observed. "If we survive this, the swarm won't have enough forces left to threaten the inner systems. But if they break through our lines, everything we've protected will be lost." Elena opened a channel to all coalition forces. "This is Captain Vasquez to all vessels. I won't lie to you. This is going to be the hardest fight of the day. We're low on ammunition. Our ships are damaged. Our people are exhausted. By every logical calculation, we should withdraw and concede this system." She paused, letting that sink in. "But humans have a saying. We didn't come this far just to come this far. We've fought together, bled together, and learned together. We've shown the swarm that protecting others makes us stronger, not weaker. We've proven that different species with different strengths can become something greater than the sum of their parts. So I'm asking, who's ready to finish what we started?" The responses came immediately. Zelfax roared his battle cry, echoed by every Korthan warrior in his fleet. Serena's crystalline form blazed with determined light, as selenium vessels powered up for one final stand. Vorn's synthesized voice held what might have been pride, as Draxii ships prepared their most experimental weapons. And the human fleet, battered but unbroken, moved into position for the final engagement. The wreck swarm surged forward like a tsunami of living ships. The coalition forces met them not with fear, but with coordinated fury, born from hours of learning to fight as one. Korthan dreadnoughts used human-taught deception, feinting and misdirecting until wreck ships overcommitted, then striking with devastating force at exposed flanks. Selenium vessels maintained fluid defensive patterns that protected damaged ships while creating openings for counterattacks. Draxi technology, unleashed through creative human-inspired applications, disrupted Vrex coordination across vast areas of space. And humans fought with the courage that had carried them from Earth to the stars, protecting, adapting, refusing to abandon anyone who needed help. The UESS Indomitable led a formation that included Korthon, Selenium, and Draxi vessels in a unified strike force. They moved as one organism, each species contributing their strengths to cover others' weaknesses. When Korthon shields failed, human ships extended theirs. When human weapons ran dry, Draxi vessels provided covering fire. When Selenium sensors were jammed, Korthon instincts guided the group. The battle became a test of endurance, determination, and the unshakable belief that protecting others was worth any cost. Human Marines continued rescue operations even as their ships burned around them. Korthon warriors stood their ground when retreat would have been logical. Selenium tacticians made decisions based on compassion, rather than cold mathematics. Draxi engineers pushed their equipment beyond safe limits to save coalition vessels. On the Indomitable's bridge, Elena watched as the UESS Guardian, the ship that had defended the civilian transport earlier, took catastrophic damage while covering a retreat. Captain Rodriguez's last transmission was simple. Got 12 more Korthon escape pods to safety. Worth it. Tell Earth we did good. Elena felt tears sting her eyes, but kept her voice steady. We will tell them, Guardian. We will tell everyone what you did here. The Vrek swarm's final formation began to collapse as the hive mind encountered something it could not overcome. An enemy that fought not for conquest or survival, but for each other. Every time the swarm adapted to one tactic, the coalition forces invented 3 more. Every time the bioships tried to isolate and destroy individual vessels, others came to their rescue. The turning point came when a massive Vrex command ship, a biovessel the size of a moon, attempted to break through the center of the coalition line. It would have succeeded, except for what happened next. Human, Corthan, Selenium, and Draxi ships from across the battlefield converged on that single point. They moved with imperfect coordination, following no doctrine except the shared understanding that this enemy must not pass. They poured everything they had into stopping that one ship, accepting terrible losses to achieve it. When the command ship finally exploded, destroying dozens of coalition vessels in its death throes, the wreck swarm simply stopped. The hive mind had no framework for understanding enemies who would sacrifice so much for beings not their own kind. The remaining bioships turned and fled into deep space, their perfect coordination shattered by exposure to something they could not comprehend: love. The battle for the Talon Nebula was over. In the days that followed, the galaxy learned what had happened. The story spread from world to world, the moment humans entered battle, bringing not just weapons, but wisdom, not just strength, but compassion, not just tactics, but the revolutionary idea that protecting others was the highest form of power. The Coalition held a memorial service for the fallen. Thousands of beings from dozens of species gathered to honor those who had given everything. Humans stood beside Corthan warriors. Selenium crystals glowed next to Draxii forms. Former strangers mourned together as family. Elena gave the eulogy. We lost 3,472 human personnel in this battle. The Corthan lost over 5,000 warriors. The Selenium sacrificed 1,800 of their finest minds. The Draxi gave 900 of their best technicians. We count these losses together because we fought together, bled together, and proved together that our differences make us stronger when we choose unity over division. She looked across the gathered mourners. The wreck swarm came here expecting to face divided species, fighting with predictable tactics and selfish strategies. Instead, they encountered something that no hive mind could understand. Individuals choosing to fight for each other, to protect strangers, to share freely, and to adapt constantly. They encountered the Coalition not as it was, but as it could be. Commander Zelthax stepped forward, his massive form moving with reverence. I am a warrior of the Corthan Empire. I was taught that strength meant never yielding, never retreating, never showing weakness. Humans taught me that true strength is knowing when to adapt, when to protect, when to trust others with your life. I am honored to call them allies. I am humbled to call them friends. Serena spoke next, her crystalline voice carrying across the assembly. Logic suggested humans were too primitive to offer meaningful assistance. Logic was incomplete. Humans brought variables that mathematics alone cannot capture. Courage, creativity, and compassion that transforms weakness into strength. They taught us that some equations can only be solved with heart. Vorn's contribution was simple but profound. Humans showed us that the most advanced technology means nothing without the wisdom to use it well. They fought with inferior weapons, but superior spirit. In doing so, they proved that intelligence without empathy is merely data, while empathy with intelligence becomes wisdom. The memorial ended with a moment of silence, but what came after would change the galaxy forever. The Coalition Council formally requested that Earth establish the first multi-species military academy. Humans would teach tactics, adaptation, and what they called thinking outside the box. But more importantly, they would teach something deeper, that strength multiplies when beings choose to protect each other, that knowledge grows when shared freely, and that the willingness to fight for others is not a weakness, but the foundation of true power. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of the rebuilt station, looking out at the Talon Nebula. The colonies below were safe, their 47 billion inhabitants going about their lives because people of different species chose to stand together. History will remember this battle, Elena. The moment when humans entered and doubt was obliterated across the stars. Elena smiled softly. The doubt that was obliterated wasn't about human strength. It was the doubt that different beings could truly fight as one. The Vrek swarm was defeated not by human firepower, but by human heart, showing others what was possible when we stopped fighting alone. And now? Chen asked. Elena looked at the mixed patrols of human, Korthan, Selenium, and Draxi ships working together in the distance. Now we teach the galaxy what we learned, that the greatest weapon is compassion, the strongest defense is unity, and the most powerful force in the universe is beings choosing to protect each other regardless of the cost. The battle for the Talon Nebula became legend. Not for the enemies defeated, but for the barriers broken, the friendships forged, and the undeniable proof that when beings fight not for conquest, but for each other, doubt itself becomes impossible to sustain. The moment humans entered battle, they brought something the galaxy desperately needed. Hope that being different could be a strength, that protecting others was worth any cost, and that together, even the impossible could be achieved. And the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter for it.